Lesson 5-6, Solving Equations. The essential question, I can solve equations containing fractions. All right, I'm going to teach you about a reciprocal. A reciprocal is a word used to say I'm going to flip over a fraction. So what I call it is the refliprical. It also has an even harder name. It's called the multiplicative inverse, which you might see either name written in your homework today. I call that the multiflipative inverse. Notice I'm putting the word flip into both of these long words. And so what it is I'm just going to take my 2/3, for example, and I'm going to flip it over and say 3/2. The reciprocal, or refliprical, of 2/3 is 3/2. I do not need to change this into a mixed number, even though it's an improper fraction, because I'm going to be using it as an improper fraction, so I'm just going to leave it like that. 8 is just a whole number, right? So if I wanted to make a whole number into a fraction, we already learned from yesterday's lesson that we can put the whole number over 1 and call that a fraction. So 8 over 1, the refliprical is 1 over 8. Again, if I want to flip a fraction, I can't flip something that has 3 sides, so I need to make sure that I have just one top and one bottom. So I got to get rid of this 4. I'm going to make this into an improper fraction. So I will multiply, that's 24, and add, that's 29 on the top, and on the bottom I have 6. That's not the refliprical yet, that's just this number in an improper fraction. So instead, I'm going to now take what I have and flip it, 6 over 29. So again, reciprocal means refliprical. The other word used sometimes is multiplicative inverse, and I call it the multiflipative inverse. Try finding these reciprocals in your notebook, or sorry, in your Cornell notes. Okay, so you should have gotten 15 over 8. Multiply and add, that gives me 17/4. Flip that over, you should have gotten 4/17. And again, 3 as a fraction is 3 over 1, so its reciprocal is 1 over 3. Why would we need to use a reciprocal? Well, if you notice, if you multiply a reciprocal by its original form, so let's say I had 2/3, my reciprocal is 3/2. If I multiply those, I'm going to get 6 on the top and I'm going to get 6 on the bottom. That gives me a 1. You're going to get the same number on the top and the same number on the bottom. You're going to turn it into a 1. That's really helpful when I'm trying to solve an equation, when I want to get something to just one variable so that I can solve for that one variable. Let's use it in this example. So remember, whenever you have an equation, you have numbers on both sides of the equal sign. That's my clue that I need to draw a line and say, this needs to be solved. There should only be numbers on one side of my equal sign. Okay, so I want to solve for y. In order to solve for y, I need to get rid of 1/4. Right now they're touching, which means it's multiplied. So this is saying 1/4 times y equals 1/6. To get rid of 1/4 being multiplied times y, I'm going to do the opposite, which is dividing. We haven't divided yet, but I will tell you it's as simple as this. You're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to take 1/4 and I'm going to multiply it by 4 over 1. Notice if I do that, and I'm not actually going to do this every time. Oops, 4 over 1. I'm not going to actually do this every time because I know if I multiply the reciprocal by the reciprocal, it's only going to give me 1. But I have 1 times 4 on the top and 4 times 1 on the bottom, and that gives me 1, right? So I'm left with 1y. Think of it like one book is a book, 1y is a y. I don't need to write 1y. I'm just going to write y down here. Okay, so those cancel out. Do the same thing to the other side. Multiply by 4 over 1. On the top I get 4. On the bottom I get 6. Divide by 2 to simplify. And I get y equals 2/3. My favorite thing about equations is that you can check them. So I'm going to take my 1/4 multiplied times my 2/3. Across the top I get 2. Across the bottom I get 12. That simplifies to 1/6, which matches, and I know I did it right. This is a little different problem. They're in the same section, but it's a different problem. So what I'm going to do, because there's numbers on both sides of my equal sign, I'm going to draw a line. Separating my problem, I'm going to look at my b and notice that it's being divided by 8. What's the opposite of dividing by 8? multiplying times 8. So I'm going to multiply times 8. Remember, 8 is the same as the fraction 8 over 1. Here I'm not using the reciprocal because I'm multiplying, like to get rid of it. So I've got b left over on this side, and on this side I could simplify before I multiply actually. Let's look at this. I could take a 4 out of each of those. 8 has 2 4s. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply across the top. I get 6. Multiply across the bottom, I get 1. 6 over 1 simplifies to just plain old 6. Let's check. This says 6 over 8 is equal to 3 over 4. Is that true? Well, let's simplify that. That simplifies to 3/4. Is 3/4 equal to 3/4? Absolutely. Here's one more showing you when we need to use the reciprocals. So whenever you see a fraction, you know that we're going to be using the reciprocal because we have to multiply by the opposite of what's there. So I'm noticing here that m is being multiplied by 2/3. To get rid of it, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, 3/2. Multiply times 3/2. This one disappears. I have m left over. On this one I have 3 on the top and 4 on the bottom. Let's check my answer. Is 2/3 times 3/4 equal to 1/2? Well, on the top I have 6, on the bottom I have 12, and when I divide by 6, I get 1/2. So I did it correctly. Pause the video and try these problems. Okay, so this one you should have multiplied by 3. Multiplied by 3, which is 3 over 1. Y equals 3 over 5. For number 2, you should multiply by the reciprocal, 7/2. 7/2. Here I have m equals 7 over 10. The third one, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, 8/3. 8/3. I notice I can simplify a lot before I multiply. Those turn into 1s. I can take out a 4 here. So I have 2 over 1, which is b equals 2. And the last one, multiplied by 6, which is 6 over 1. H is equal to 12 over 3, which is the same as 4. Okay, it's time to check in and see how much you know. Try either your NICU check or the lesson from the book. Have a great night.